Well, as usual, before we start with that, just a comment on our books. Nick talked about we have a by donation book sale in the back. Just a couple of notes. One is I noticed several people bringing books in today, and I thank you for that. It's a good variety to be able to get different people's tastes in books, and a good opportunity to recycle a lot of interesting books through the membership. And we do rotate the books so that if they don't, after a period of time, nobody's interested in them, we do pass them along to a good home. And today is the last day for the books in red. So if you saw a book with a red mark on it, if you're interested, grab it, because today's the last day for those books.
Yeah.
Our speaker tonight is Tim is a writer, photographer, and I have to read this because he's got so many fancy things that there's no way I can remember or leave them out. Tim's a writer, photographer, and journalist based in Spokane, born in Camp Hanford, Washington. He became an associate editor at Spokane Magazine in 1981 and has also written for Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, Portland, Oregonian, something like that. Washington, who cares about this Portland? Washington Law and Politics and the Seattle Weekly, among other publications. He's been awarded 3 Sigma Delta Chi first place national awards for investigative reporting and was honored in 2011 with the Excellence in Legalism Award by the Washington State Bar Association. He's testified before both houses of Congress and presented before the National Institute of Medicine, the National Commission on Radiological Protections and Standards. Prior to Beautiful Wounds, his most recent book with Margaret Witt is Tell, Love, Defiance, and the Military Trial at the Tipping Point of Gay Rights in 2017. And with that, hopefully I didn't forget anything. I will pass this along.
Wow, there's a lot to live up to. There's a story in the Connor family.
Just you need to keep it.
Yeah, oh boy. That's loud. Surrounding my departure from high school, I was, believe it or not, I was a high school quarterback. I was up in the playground the day that my grandfather, Charlie, who grew up during the Depression, learned of my decision to be a writer. And he was less than enthused, and the story is that he literally followed me up the stairs of the weight room, begging me to reconsider, and says, "You need to be a lawyer, Tim. You're never going to make any money doing writing." So anyway, I was reminded the last week or so I had conversations with, I guess it was 2 women, and the question was, "So what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm a writer and a photographer." And the response was, "No, what do you do for a living?" So, yeah. So with that, I kind of arrived tonight as a writer and a traveling salesman. I've got books over here, but I've also got photography. This is some of my stab lens work and some of my work in the Spokane River up here, and it's for sale. I'm also taking subscriptions for my new Substack. I do a daily missive and postcard with my photography. If you're interested in that, if you want to leave your email, there's a clipboard over there and you can try that out. So with the marketing stuff finished for now, let me turn to my subject. Normally when I do book events, I read my book, Beautiful Wounds. But 2 things are true tonight. One is I'm sensitive about time. And I'd rather have more time for interaction with you than just read my book. And the other thing is, it's just time. I mean, I'd rather talk and show than read from a book. And honestly, it's hard to do that with a microphone like this. I'll need both hands with the book. But this is what the book looks like. It's dedicated to my daughter, but you'll notice if you read it, there's quite an homage in there to my mother, Joanne, who's from Pasco and gave birth to me at Hanford after a very short car ride from Pasco. The story behind that was my dad was on active duty in Korea, and if you drove to the Army Hospital in Hanford, you could have me for free. So the Connors and the Hartmans are nothing but frugal. I'm going to walk you through my Scatland sojourn slideshow. Beautiful Wounds is a sad story at first. It's about my retreat to the Scatlands and my memories in the Scatlands with Joanne's dad, Grandpa Gil, at a time of my life where I was divorced and heartbroken. Which is another reason not to read from that part of the book. It ends well with recovery and me moving on with my life. But also, part of what I wanted to celebrate was not just that experience, but the experience of being in this unique landscape. I mean, I didn't know much about the Scatlands, even though as a grandchild, I'd been in the Scatlands, but I didn't realize until I got to college, it's just what an incredible story. The discovery, we call it the discovery of the Scatland, but this really was a scientific journey by renegades and rogue geologists. It was actually a very good geologist. His name was J. Harlan Brett. And he proposed the Scatland theory 100 years ago. He came to Spokane with his grad students 100 years ago and wrote this amazing paper on their travels through this territory, this area that used to be polluted, that's been washed clean of its soil to barren rock. And he proposed that it was caused by a catastrophic flood, which was virtual heresy to the National Geologic Establishment, which was very much into the idea that these great landscapes are all a result of gradual changes. And, Brett's was open to gradualism in train. But the Rick was telling him a different story. And it took him his entire life to get that story out and be vindicated. And I was just happy to be a geology student at Wazoo in the late 70s when Brett's in his 90s was finally awarded with the Penrose Medal, which is the highest award of American geology. Basically, it's the Nobel Prize of American geology. This vindication after a half century or more of being at odds with the geologic establishment. So that's part of the story I'm covering. What I'm going to cover tonight is my own travels through the Scatland. I'm going to tell you some geology, but I'm also going to introduce you to some fascinating animals and birds that you may not have met. So going right past the fish. This is my friend Oscar. I met him last year in the Spokane River. And you're wondering, what's a trout doing a story about the Scatlands? Well, he's my friend, and he lets me swim with him. But I want you to notice what he's swimming above. Those cobbles, most of them are over 1 billion years old. They are part of the outwash. Most of the cobbles in the Spokane River don't come from the Spokane River. They come from Montana. They come from the outwash of the Great Floods. They also bring the cold water and the volumes of water that swimmers like me need and fish like Oscar need in late summer to survive. That tragedy gives us a river that Oscar and I can enjoy. And I can't wait to get back in the water and look for him in June. Maybe like May, but we'll see. This is one of my photos. These are the Lake Missoula cobbles. These come from, well, I'll get to this. If I'm not careful, I'll keep you here for 2 hours. And you won't like that, and I won't either. This is another shot from my swimming hole. That boulder on the bottom is basically granitic erratic from the Great Floods that wound up in the Spokane River. Those hills in the background are piled all the way to the top with glacial flood cobbles. If you go up there and reach down, you'll be holding Lake Missoula cobbles in your hand. Okay, this is where I can really get off track, but you're going to love this story if I explain it right. That little piece of mustard right in the middle with 2 arrows pointing from it is the belt basin, which is one of the most unusual geologic features in North America. Some scientists think it was created by a meteor impact. It's like 20,000 feet deep. And it filled up over time with sediments when this was a basin. Those basins became as the belt group, or the belt supergroup. And in ancient times, around the time of supercontinent Sardinia, they were right on the coastline. Laurentia in purple is ancient North America. The Mawson is part of ancient Antarctica and Australia. You got Northern Australia. Back in those years, over a billion years ago, we were all joined together. This is literally true. You can check my math on this. There are rocks from Spokane in Australia. There are rocks from Australia in Spokane. The sediments that flowed into that basin were from both America, Australia, and Antarctica. And at two of my book readings, the scientist who wrote that story, Steve Box, you'll see his name there at the bottom, was there. So I spent a lot of time with Steve talking about this story. I'll be sharing it in my my writings later this year. But it's one of the fascinating things that we live with today is these amazing rocks. Spokane, for hundreds of millions of years, is right on the edge of that. Spokane was oceanside property for hundreds of millions of years until the rest of Washington basically came in off the ancient Pacific and docked against Spokane. So this is much more recent. I mean, this is like yesterday in geologic time. This is that white sheet up there is the Corral ice sheet that flowed down, obviously from Canada, and blocked, among other things, the Clark Fork River, Clark Fork, Idaho, Monterey, and caused the Clark Fork River to back up into Montana. So that blue you see on the right side is ancient lake, glacial Lake Missoula. And that, what we now know over time is that that ice dam formed by the Purcell Glacier broke several times, unloosing that water that came all the way down through Spokane, down to Pasco, made a right turn at Wallula Gap and headed up to the Pacific Ocean. And that's what gave us the scaplings. I've got Wallula Gap highlighted there because that's where I was introduced to the scaplings. This is just a cross section of where we live. That purple, green, and yellowish piece, Silesia, NC, and Quisnella, the Q, are all terrains that got added to Washington State after Pangea. That PC belt green strip on the right is where Spokane is. You can see where the Washington-Idaho border is. If you could look down beneath Spokane, you would see that Spokane is just on the lip of that billion-year-old rock from the Belt Basin still. This is Wallula Gap. This is the place that Gil introduced me to when I was not even 10 years old. We were on our way to go. He liked to fish the toucan up in the Blues. And Wallula Gap was a shortcut to get to the mountains. And I remember, I grew up in Panama in a tropical rainforest. And this is the opposite of that. And I was just mesmerized by this place, especially the way sound traveled across this majestic water gap. This is one of America's great water gaps. If you go to Portland, you can find it if you're willing to take the same route. If not, you're just going to go over the Horse Seven Hills down to Umatilla and on there. But it's very much worth the trip. And the hike to get to where I took this picture is really not that hard. And if you want to ask me how to get there later, I'd be glad to share that with you. So beneath us, there's a lot of basalt. You know this. You live in Spokane. You see basalt everywhere you go. And what I'm just going to tell part of the story tonight because we all have bedtimes. But you'll see these layers here are all different basalt flows. And the one I want to point you to is the mustard one on top with the purple line through it. That purple line is the vent. So you have to think about what Hawaii, the island of Hawaii, looked like 3 years ago. Not with the volcanoes, but with the fissures in the earth sending up showers of molten rock. You remember this? Roads being closed, people running for us. Well, that's what happened here 15 million years ago. And actually, I was just there 3 days ago. I actually have spatter from that vent on my desk at home. I would have brought it tonight, but but then I have to tell that story. Yeah, we've only got 45, so I'm gonna keep going. So the rest of the story is coming up. If I can get the slide with you. Well, this is the spatter pile that I visited just 3 days ago. That red stuff is volcanic spatter. That's the stuff that got ejected out of the air, out into the air from that vent, and ultimately became magma. And that magma went all the way to the Columbia River to form the feathers. This is one of the most dramatic rock formations in Washington State. The last time I was at the State Museum in Tacoma, there was like half the room with just the feathers projected on the wall. These are the surviving rows of basalt pillars in Freshman Springs Camp and Freshman Springs School, which you can visit. It's not that hard. If you're going on I-90 towards Vantage, you know, when you start to go down slope, you know where the amphitheater is where you go to the concert. If you just go one exit more, it's a Silica Road exit. And if you get off of that exit and just follow the old Vantage Highway, you'll come to this amazing rock formation. I went there in winter because I like to photograph it with people from Seattle climbing all over. It's incredibly popular, mostly with rock climbers who are dressed in clothing that's quite a bit more expensive than what I'm wearing tonight. This is Brett's. Excuse me while I get my water glass. So I think I said I learned about Brett's at Wazoo the year he was given his award. This was sometime between that. There's a wonderful biography of Brett's. He was a naturalist, funny guy, a beautiful writer as a young man, an adventurer. He and his wife kept a pet snake in the house, probably. It died under a rocking chair. But I think I've got so many tangents in my head. But what was really cool about it, he was invited to DC in 27. He thought he was going to be celebrated for espousing the Scatman theory. Instead, he was humiliated. It turned into like a roast. It had everything but phosphor roast in it. You know, just humiliating him in front of his peers for proposing such an outlandish thing. It broke his heart. His daughter just remembered him being a changed man after that. And so this was in 1927. He wasn't vindicated until the late 70s. And to be honest, I carried that with me on my own journey. I'm not Brett's, but I was really aware when I was doing my book, Beautiful Wounds, that I was walking in his footsteps. Excuse me. Okay, some quick geology. This is part of what got Brett's attention. This is right on the edge of the Columbia River. It's a formation, it's a depression we call Potholes Coulee today. It's south of Quincy. If you've been to Grant County, you know how flat it is. And there in the midst of Grand Coulee, it's just big. It looks like a giant moose that stepped there. Looks like a big footprint. And Brett's wanted, the USGS came out with this map in 1910, and Brett's was first in line to get it, because he was just fascinated with what to create this. And the geology establishment at UW and elsewhere had no answer. It was just a mystery. And of course, Brett saw that mystery. That coulee exists because the floodwaters from Lake Missoula and other glacial lakes drain through that coulee, Potholes Coulee. This is my photo. This is the coulee in person. It looks like I took this picture from the drone, but I'm actually standing on the back rim of the northern alcove at Potholes Coulee. I can only get one chamber of the coulee in my lens at a time. That's how big this feature is. You can see the ridge, that ridge in the background. It's George Wenatchee. Those lakes in the foreground are called the ancient lakes. They're really not that ancient, but they're flood features as well. This is up on Lake Ponderay. You'll see that mountain in the back with the white face on it. That is where the Purcell Trench Glacier docked against Fremont Ridge. And that's what the Bushwells River, it created like Missoula. This is Brett's map. You'll see it if you can read the bottom. This is his map from 1923. He was based in Spokane when he and his students put this together. It's just a hand-drawn map. the first map really of the channel scablands that was published along with this paper in late 1923. That's Spokane is up in the upper right-hand corner. I think you can see where the Columbia makes its turn. That's Hamburg down at the bottom left with the horn there, and Pasco's were kind of at the bottom of that shaded area. So this is a Palouse. The reason I put this in the slideshow, one, you can't see this from in the back of the room, but one of my favorite birds is flying low in double, sort of northern heron. But this is what Eastern Washington will look like entirely without the scablands. It would all be Palouse, which is great for wheat. It's not so great for the wetlands that would not be there. The thing about Palouse soil is wonderful dry land soil because it holds water and you don't have to irrigate it to grow bumper crops. But it soaks up all the moisture. There aren't lakes. I mean, you've got the Palouse River, but think how many lakes do you see in Palouse? You don't. There's not a lot of standing water. You get in the scablands, you see lakes everywhere. Not just Sprague Lake and Rock Lake, but the myriad of lakes that surround Spokane to the south. So when I started doing this story, and I would tell people at parties, not that I got that much, where do you go when you go to the scablands? I said, well, you're in the scablands. Spokane is the nozzle for the scablands. I mean, the only reason we don't notice it as much is we've got all the beautiful ponderosa pines. But this is so this is from a USGS publication in the 80s. That's a Lake Missoula flood inundating Spokane. I mean, that's what gives us, with such power, by the way, that they changed the course of the Spokane River. Spokane River used to run through Hilliard. But it also overflowed, if you can believe this, if you go to the Ball and Pitcher and hook up at those tiers of rock, that flood overflowed all of it. All of it. And then took off the Pasco. That's how much water was unloosed by the glacial Lake Missoula floods. I'm going to show you some terrain. This is out your fish trap, a beautiful camas bog with obviously a piece of basalt bent down. The hill in the upper left-hand corner is a surviving Palouse hill that's been reshaped. I call them Brett's Hills. They face towards Spokane and their tails in towards Pasco. This is the what's this doing on my slideshow? This is North America's largest meteorite. It's called the Willamette meteorite. It was found first by the Native Americans in the Willamette Valley called the Dolawamas. When it was found later, it was found by two pioneers who wanted to move it off of property so they could claim it and sell it to a museum. Because they realized that it was a meteorite. They hit it with a hammer and it rang like a bell. It's an iron and nickel. Interesting thing, there's no meteor crater in the Willamette Valley. Where is it? Well, I'm getting that part. It's in a museum in the garden. I've got a backtrack. So anyway, this thing actually fell in Canada and got caught up in the ice sheet that got exploded by the dam break. This meteorite came all the way down, basically from Sandpoint, made a right turn, came right through Spokane, floated right through your city on an iceberg, went down the Ola Gap, all the way down the Columbia Gorge, and settled south of Portland. It's the most exotic, erratic of the Great Floods, and it's now a museum in New York. Got a long story. My friend Jack Nisbet has written about this in his book. I can't remember the name. He's written so many ancient places, I believe. This is scabland terrain. Obviously, this is in May, not August. Again, that's a Brett's Hill in the background, a surviving Palouse hill, profoundly reshaped by the floods. I mean, you can look at that. It looks like it happened yesterday. The fresh rock on the surface. I just like this because I like frost on pines. This is scabland with pines south of Turnbull. Early balsam root out One of my favorite places in remote Whitman County. Post Falls, we'll visit Post Falls if I get the video to work here later. This is the Drumheller Channels. This butte was smashed by the floods. The floods came right in the camera and smashed into this butte, removed all the soil, and exposed these beautiful Elephant Mountain salt. This is back in Potholes Coulee. This is the falls below the pool. Many of you will recognize this is Upper Grand Coulee. You go all the way back on the right, that's Steamboat Rock, basically where the road goes there. This is Moses Coulee, which is one of the older mysterious flood features. Geologists are still sorting out the creation story of Moses Coulee. But these are some of the magnificent ramparts in Moses Coulee, right where Douglas Creek comes in near the town of Palisades. These are some of my favorite flowers. On the left is our native iris. I don't know. I hate to call any bird or flower my favorite, but one of my favorites is the green banded mariposa living in the middle. It reminds me of some of the orchids I grew up with in Panama. But it also blooms after everything else has kind of died back. In the middle of summer, you'll be out there and the ground will be brown. And much like bitterroot, green banded mariposa lilies will be growing. And that's our sticky geranium, our wild geranium. This is a scabron bouquet. This is blanket flower, yarrow, and wild geranium. This is on by Sprague Lake. You ever driven by Sprague Lake in July? I mean, it looks like somebody hit it with a blowtorch. But if you're there in April or May, sorry, I probably got in trouble with the Sprague Chamber of Commerce. But if you're out there in the spring, this is what it looks like. This is another variety of balsam. This is called Carey's balsam. The pink flower, more on the right, is Lewis's onion, wild onion, or Douglas's onion. Of course, this is cannabis. This is a cannabis bog out by Fish Trap with a bread hill in the background. And this is bitterroot. I actually took this photo. You can find bitterroot in Spokane if you look carefully. Some of it up in Lincoln Park, up in that rocky step there. These are actually taken on the periphery of Palisades Park last year. So this is America's smallest bird, the calliope hummingbird. They sometimes buzz me. I like it so much I included 2 pictures. This is another calliope. And then we go from America's smallest bird to as big as ungulate. This is the moose I nearly hit on my bike last summer. This will test your personality skills in a hurry. I met him a couple times, and this one I'm close, and I think we're good. And this is a female moose chewing on red twig dogwood, middle of winter, out of Turnbull. My son was in a car at the time. I asked him to stay there. Safety first. Devin, my son, and I have actually swum with otters in Whitehawk Creek, but this was in February, and he was not inviting me in. He actually barked at me. But I got his picture. Look at that. Look at the look in his eyes. Dude, you want to hop in? Yeah, so I'm out in the Drumheller. I just drove out there at 4 in the morning to get a sunrise shot, and I'm setting up for it. I hear the sun, and I turn around, and look at the throw going. So the cool thing about this, I'll just add, is that mule deer are a matriarchal society. So if you want to get anywhere with a mule deer herd, you got to find a late female, and you got to talk to her, and you got to make noise. And it's squad. If you think getting a girlfriend is hard, guys. This is a son of one of the matriarchs. I was coming down a hill on my bike, dressed in yellow, bad fashion. So I took off as much yellow as I could and worked my way to his mom. And as I was visiting with her, she invisibly signaled to him that it was up, and he was actually walking toward her when I took his picture. And you can tell it was early in the morning. That's the morning sun in his left ear coming through. Cool. I mean, just a great moment. This is maybe a more nervous moment. This is an American Badger out by Lamont. A lot of soft speaking and eye contact with him. Seemed to work out okay. This is a coyote. This is up in Palisades, actually. You know, there are orbits of animals. Some want nothing to do with you. Some are willing to explore, and some will approach you. But coyotes, they want nothing to do with people. There's just been too many coyotes killed for them to be friendly or interested in anything. So I actually did get this picture because I saw him before. So I appreciate it. This is one of my favorite. I need to throw away the word favorite. This is an American kestrel, which is one of the falcons that frequents the Saskatchewan. They'll be in Spokane too, probably chasing pigeons. But it isn't until you get really close that you can appreciate the coloration. Just look at the beauty of the purple and the orange and both colors of that bird. The only reason I was able to get this picture with a pretty good boost of a lens was that he was more interested in lunch than he was in me. Well, he was actually chasing food at one breakfast. Obviously, the red-tailed hawk. Yeah, seemed quite frequently. I actually saw two today when I was up in Rimrock, skying together. So Cooper's hawk that was hunting. Shoot, what was the after this thing? So I'm not the same now, I'll play around. Morning ducks. So this is America's second largest bird. This is the American white pelican. You won't see white pelicans very much in Spokane, but down in the basin, especially the wildlife areas around the Columbia River, they're fairly common. This was actually taken at Clear Lake a couple of years ago, which is just out in the Four Lakes area, which is as close to Spokane as I've seen them. I've never seen I swim in the Spokane River a lot. I've never seen a white pelican in the Spokane. Oh, these are two of my favorites. You'll probably recognize the red-winged blackbird in the background more than the yellow-headed, but the yellow-headed don't come into town, but they've got an amazing growling call. I'll play for you later if we have time. Western bluebird up in Palisades. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous songbird. Rufus-sided towhee. Beautiful red eye. Bird that likes to hang out in the brush. But it takes a little bit of work to get a photo. It's a black-headed grosbeak. Same thing, the same coloration. They have different songs, so that's the way I tell them apart. Look at the beak on that thing, boy. This is a western kingbird on a wire by Spring Lake, I think. And this is a bird you can see in Spokane on occasion. This is our oriole. This is the Bullock's oriole. And I had to work really hard. I had first, before I could photograph Bullock's orioles, I had to recognize their song. That took me about 2.5 years. This is the sacred bird of the Wombo tribe, by the way. This photo was actually taken here in Spokane. But it's hard to find it, but it's worth the wait. They're a beautiful bird. Obviously, great-billed heron. I have been able to form relationships with parents, which is possible. Golfers on golf courses will form relationships with parents too, so I wouldn't say anything special about that, but you do have to work a little bit harder at it and more. But I spent weeks hanging out with this beautiful creature, and she finally let me get close enough to get this wonderful photo of her. So hooded merganser, we have beautiful ducks in the winter, and which is no rap against mallards. It's just nice to see these handsome diving ducks. These are male golden-eyed ducks, another one of these colorful winter visitors. And these are the females. The great catbird, which you probably hear a lot more than you see, an amazing vocalist, but usually always deep in the brush. I had stumbled into the brush and looked up, and there was a catbird. That's how you do that. This is the herald of spring. This is the western meadowlark. Not a bird that comes into town. I was out with a friend just a few days ago, with snow on the ground, and the meadowlarks were back. They just went up on, they wouldn't be up posts. In a couple of weeks, they'll come up higher and start singing from utility poles and such, and fence posts. But they're still kind of low now right now. Northern flicker, if you've got metal siding or a chimney, you probably heard one of these trying to break into your house. But a gorgeous bird too. They're shy. This is a shot that required a lot of patience. These are tundra swans. They should be here any day. This time last year, we had tundra swans on the lakes. So they're doing their migration now back to the Arctic, and they'll make another migration in the fall. And they'll visit the same lakes both ways. And we get both tundra swans, which are these guys, and I'm trying to remember the other variety of swans. Will come to me as soon as I move the slide. This is one of my favorite places. This is part of the complex of canyons by Dry Falls. I mean, what's different about lower Grand Coulee than upper Grand Coulee is upper Grand Coulee is like half pipe. When you get down in Dry Falls, it spreads out, and this is one of the beautiful. I was going to say canyons, but this is just another coulee. This is Dry Coulee. This is just a beautiful, haunting photo for me. These are black locusts that were planted by the pioneer farmers as windbreaks. They only live about 100 years. And then these are obviously near the end of their life. But just a haunting photo of the scaffoldings out way beyond cellular service. So this is Joanne and Gil. When Joanne was in high school, that's my mom on the left. I finished Beautiful Wounds about 3 weeks after she passed. If I were going to read tonight, I would have read from the first chapter, which is called God's Country, she said. Because that's how my mom thought about this train. And when we would come up from Panama, it would be in the summer, and it would be brown, and we couldn't understand what she was talking about. And we would chuckle. So, from a deep part of my heart, this book was a tribute to my mom, and not just her love of the place, but just her love of people. She just was just one of the loveliest people you'd ever want to meet. As was her father. Her father, Gil. I'm just going to share this story about Gil. Because, I'm from Hanford. Hanford's got a legacy in the Tri-Cities, and unfortunately, one of the legacies was racist. And partly that was a feature of the immigration from the South during the war. Segregation came through that door to the Tri-Cities. So the only place that African Americans could live was in Pasco. Most of them settled in West Pasco, which is where my family was from. And Gil was on the board of the committee that had to build a new swimming pool in Pasco in the 50s. There was a book written about that area called Plutopia that wondered how in the world that pool became segregated. keep segregated because of Gilmar. You know, he said, no, we're not gonna do that here. And he told me that story. He wasn't bragging about it. He was just saying, this is part of my experience. He sold life insurance at the time. He was really putting his family's food on the line by taking that stand. Hey, I'm so proud of that guy. He was not an angry man. He was a happy man, but he knew how to take a stand. These are my kids. Just had to throw that in there. That's my son Devin, who's carrying my tripods at the Rocks of Sharon on the valley. He's a wonderful saxophonist. Some of you may have heard him play with the masterclass big band. He's just a very talented musician. My daughter is a talented poet, and as you can see from the bottom picture, she'll also go with me to places and dress like an outlaw. This is my website, Breward Skies, brewardskies.net. You'll see my essays, all my photo galleries. I have Joanne didn't get a funeral because of Pope. And so I was invited this winter to give a sermon at the Unitarian Church. And I thought, well, I'll give it here. So the text of that eulogy is in that essay, in the realm of her heart. So if you go to my website, you can read that piece. There's a lot of other stuff there. You don't have to spend a lot of time there to enjoy the photography. That's the wonderful thing about photography. Just take a peek at it if you like. And this is my contact information. If you want to get in touch with me, if you want to buy my work, or if you want to read my stuff, I'll be happy to oblige. Anyway, if we have some time left, I'll be glad to answer a few questions. Oh, actually, I wanted to show you a movie. Do we have 8 minutes, Dick?
We have about 8.
All right. Pressure's on. No, the good thing about the movie for you all is no talking. Here we go. I have to find the movie first. Sorry about that. Here we go. That's not right. No, I have to restart the computer to get it to work. So, if you give me a couple minutes, can we do that, Dick?
So why don't you ask the question later?
Yeah.
Anybody have a question for him or a comment?
Get the movie to work.
Right, he's got the patience of Job to get some of those. Those are gorgeous.
Thank you. Well, I worked at it. Yeah, I mean, the purpose of the photography was to do that landscape justice. And, it's been very touching, especially people that have grown up their whole lives in the scab land, to be able to see color photography that, illustrates their affection for where they grew up. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I also say I've heard the comment about the beauty of the scablands. Really? He's gonna talk about the beauty of the scablands? That's comments I've heard before this talk in the past. And you can tell it's really good.
Yeah, there's it's just a decision to get off the road. And I think, one of the places, certainly Frenchman's Coulee, on the way to Seattle is only a 5-minute detour and get to see not this amazing coulee, but this incredible rock formation. But there are places around Spokane, the Fish Trap Lake area has some nice hikes that you can get to quickly in the spring. There's actually a lake called Hog Lake. I don't know, anybody been to Hog Lake out by Fish Trap? Yeah, so if you go this time of year, you'll notice a staircase waterfall at the south end of the lake, which you can hike to. And it's just great. Oh.
I was just gonna say, I think Pete gave a talk about Esker.
Yeah,
Esker, and that's in your area, right?
Yeah, no, and I was just out there a few days ago. It is, and it's public land. It's just tricky to find. And, you can take the highway past Greg to the point, but for the last 10 miles or so, you're on the dirt roads to get there, but it's really worth it. There's beautiful hiking trails. There, we're gonna give this one more try.
Third time of year, you want to be careful over the stakes.
Oh, I was gonna add that, I have a friend who wants to go with me in the Scablands, but when I tell him there's snakes out there, he said, forget it. I'm gonna stop talking now so you can hear the bird song. Can you hear that okay?
No.
No, we don't have sound. Well, I can hear it. So this is a good way to end the scaffolding. You won't be able to hear it, but the last sound I want to hear is a tiny frog that makes a little chirp. Yeah. Well, thank you for. Thank you.
Okay, quick question. Sure enough, you have like high quality audio.
No, you know, I was just really fortunate that there wasn't wind, because I don't have a muffler on my camera, but it was actually a camera microphone. I do have a high quality microphone, so I do have.
Got that.
I didn't need it then. Had there been wind, it would. Yeah, on that camera, there was only the one wind gust at the top of the drum tower. Was the only one. But yeah, I don't know if you noticed, I don't know if you could hear it, there's a woo woo wooing sound in several of those cuts. And I was just, I was puzzled as to what it was, because it turns out that it's the Wilson Snow, which is hard to see, seldom seen. And it doesn't make that sound with its voice. It makes that sound like rubbing its tail, which just blows my mind. It's called wailing. Is what they call it. But you learn something every day if you go out there alone.
I have a question, and this is kind of crazy, but how many birds different types of birds are there in this area? Do you know that?
You know, I wish,
You have a lot of.
my bird mentor is not with me tonight, Linda. On my website, so a couple of springs ago, I took a trip with her to see one of her favorite birds called the sage thrasher, which I'd never met before. And it was a spring day, kind of like today. And it was just great. She's a wonderful person. She's married to my former golf coach. That's beside the point. He's high strung, but she's very relaxed and she knows the birds. And she's in this bird network. I mean, they're like the stories you hear from Native Americans, you know, where they have this. Well, they keep track of where birds are. And so she says a couple places you might be able to see it. Sure enough, the second place is one. You can read the story. Boom. So like I'd never seen the sage structure before. So that was one of the special things that I added to my life list. There are dozens of them that I've met in Scotland. They're a bit easier to find in the rainforest, but don't report them.
Just a comment, there's 250,000 acres of BLM land in Lincoln County. It's free public land. You can walk through all of that. There's trails, there's lakes. You can see all of this scabland, beautiful scabland, all these flowers and all these birds. Anytime you want. You stop at the BLM office on Venture, you can get maps to all of their BLM in Lincoln County.
Good point. I got that. Actually, that one, those Odessa craters that you saw there with the bird song. I mean, that's really reachable. I don't know how many of you know where it's Coffee Pot Lake. So Coffee Pot Lake and Twin Lakes are part of the Lake Creek Coulee Complex, which is a beautiful wetlands. If there's something you can do as citizens is keep an eye on that. It's been really drained by irrigation such that even some of the lakes are now dried up completely in the spring. So anyway, it's worth paying attention to because you don't want to lose those wetlands. They're valuable resources. And thanks for that. You're dead on. I mean, that is such a great gift that there's so much land that's accessible in that track. Really, it's great stuff.
I'm just curious why you said the MLR stayed lower than the ground.
I don't know. You know, but I noticed this is the second winter in a row I've been out there at the very end of winter, and was surprised to hear meadowlarks. But they'll do that. I mean, there's a thumb where their winter range extends up in that part of the county. And they're there. They just, for some reason, until it warms up, they want to stay loaded. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Where exactly are those problem events where you pick up the spatter?
Oh, so if you go to Esther Ranch, and I wish there were easy directions to give. There's a series of roads that leads there. Look on the map for the ghost town of, I should call it the ghost town, but yes. It's called Revere. There's a big grain silo there you can find on the map. You get to Revere, you're almost there, but you're definitely in that area.
The SB range is BLM land. You can get a map, how to get to it, where it's at the BLM office.
Well, if you go to Big Horn Show, then I was today at the ALM section, they've got all those maps, all those coffee pot, Esther and so on.
It's good to get those. It's still a tricky place to find. The signage could be better. But once you find it, you'll never forget it. It's a great place.
One comment about coffee pot is that along the Spokane Fly Fishing Club, and we go on coffee pot this time of year, but no later because of rattlesnakes.
Yeah.
Be careful if you go.
You know, I actually go looking for rattlesnakes, and I don't mean to be cavalier, but you shouldn't don't mess with rattlesnakes. We haven't had a rattlesnake death in Washington since I think the 70s. You really have to go out of your way to get bit by. I mean, Northwest. These are not timber rattlers or, God forbid, bird ants, which will come get you. So with that in mind, you know, if you're a dog owner, I might leave the dog in the house. To go see it. Anyway, thanks for recommending. I'm going to give you the mic because I bet you'd like to go home.
Another great presentation here. Looks like all of you really enjoyed it too. Now, Carol, to answer part of your question, out there, they have the Audubon Pond, and they say they've seen 150 species of birds out of Audubon Pond. So that gives you an idea of how many birds species are in the area. So, well, we want to honor you for being here, and as a non-member, want to give you a couple of our Pacific Northwesterners. And by the way, these Pacific Northwesterners are available to buy. We have some past copies of all of them, and we've been doing this since 1956, the Pacific Northwestern. But the two that I grabbed tonight, one's on Steph Woodward, the pioneer of Millwood. The other one is Arthur J. Simpson, an amazing and versatile Spokane man. So these are what you get with your membership, and this is 1 year's worth. And we invite you to become a member, and we'd love to have you here as a member. So, yeah, thank you.